Okay, in this video we're going to go through the setup of the chemistry lab called Quantitative Determination of an Empirical Formula. In this lab we will be reacting tin and nitric acid. In this case, nitric acid acts as a source of oxygen. It's called an oxidizing agent. And so the reaction will be between the tin and the oxygen, and so we will get a product which consists of tin and oxygen. It's referred to in the lab as the tin oxygen product. Because this lab has a variety of safety precautions, let's start off by talking about those. We will dress appropriately for lab as we always do, with shoes and long pants, shirts. Aprons are probably appropriate for this one because we will be using the nitric acid. Make sure your hair is back if that's appropriate for you, and you will need to wear your goggles throughout this. You should wear gloves. I will provide you with gloves to handle the glassware, especially when handling the nitric acid. Nitric acid is quite concentrated, and it is a substance which will attack the protein in your skin and denature it, which means it makes it so it's changed and no longer usable. To you, mostly that means it will burn if you leave it on too long, and it will turn your skin yellow. Now, throughout this lab, you will be heating various things several times, and you will also have to set things aside to cool, so you need to be on your toes to make sure that you're not touching things which are hot or touching things which have not yet had a chance to cool. Now, in this lab, you'll be using an evaporating dish and a watch glass, and the watch glass in this is just going to be an example of a cover for your evaporating dish. And the procedure tells you that once you have washed the evaporating dish and cover, you should not touch it. So you have tongs and forceps to handle it with, but in this case, because you're going to be wearing gloves, you could probably just use the gloves, and that way you won't actually be touching it with your skin. The reason for that is that you can transfer oils and particles from your skin onto the evaporating dish and watch glass, and you don't want that because that'll affect your mass. Okay, once you have cleaned and dried your evaporating dish and watch glass, you're going to put it on your balance, and you're going to determine the mass of the watch glass and cover. It tells you to do that in the procedure, and you should record that in your data table. You need to be very careful when doing this lab that you are following the procedure as written and not just trying to fill in the quantities required in the data table. So once you have that mass of the empty evaporating dish and cover, then you're going to go to a sample of tin, which I have already measured out for you. It is not exactly 2 grams. It is about 2 grams of tin. I did not spend the time to make sure it was exactly 2 grams. You're going to determine that for yourself in just a minute. You're going to take this weighing dish of tin, and you're going to put it into your evaporating dish, not in the watch glass. Open up the watch glass, put it in the evaporating dish, and then you're going to mass that again. This is the second time you've determined the mass again. Follow the procedure. The procedure tells you when to take the masses. Okay, next, you're going to measure out 5 milliliters of the 8 molar nitric acid, and so then you're going to take that nitric acid and you're going to pour it into the evaporating dish. Once again, you'll have to lift off the watch glass cover, pour it into the evaporating dish, and while it may not instantly start reacting, you should begin to see it react pretty quickly. Now, about that same time, you're going to want to start setting up a water bath. Now, this is how you set up a water bath. It's a ring stand with a ring and a wire gauze. You take a 250 milliliter beaker and fill it up about 3/4 full of water and get it started heating. I don't have the flame on in this picture, but this shows you what the water bath is eventually going to look like. You need to get that started about the same time you start your reaction between your tin and nitric acid, so it can get hot, so it's ready when you're ready. Okay, so this is what the reaction looks like when it's going. You may see that there's some liquid on the inside of the watch glass because it's been splattered up from underneath. It also has a brownish tint to it because it's giving off a gas that is brown in color. And so this reaction is going to take several minutes to get done. During that time, you're just going to watch that, make observations, and also your water should be heating. Now, once it's all finished, and the procedure says it should look like oatmeal, and this is after several minutes I've let it react. Notice that there is still liquid on the bottom of the evaporating dish. Be careful not to lose that. it looks like oatmeal, malto meal, some kind of cooked breakfast cereal anyway, when the reaction is done. Now, once the reaction is done, again, you're going to go to your water bath. Hopefully, at this point, your water has had an opportunity to warm up some so that the reaction, or so that the heating can proceed immediately after you put it up on the water bath. So here is a picture of the reaction that I've placed up on top of the water bath. I have the heat going underneath it. You can see the water boiling in the beaker, and it is heating the evaporating dish. The idea here is mostly that we are going to finish up any reaction that isn't done, and we're going to start to dry out the stuff that's inside of the evaporating dish. We're going to do this slowly and gently at first, so that we don't lose any of the stuff that's inside of there. Okay, now as you're heating it, you may see it look kind of like this. Inside it looks a little bit like a raw egg. It's white around the outside with probably a yellow space in the middle. This is not done. We want it to be dry, and if you look here on the evaporating dish, not on the evaporating dish, but on the watch glass, you can see that the watch glass still has a lot of water on it. So this is not done. So please don't ask, is this done? Because it's obvious that there is still some water going on there. This is going to take a while, and patience is really the only thing we've got going for us here. Okay, so eventually it will get pretty much dry. Again, you can ask once it looks like it's pretty much dry. And you're going to need to take that water bath down off of the heat. So you're going to do that using these things. These are called beaker tongs. You notice they have a rubberized material on the jaws of the tongs so that you can grip a beaker. These beaker tongs can be found in your cabinet where you find your ring stand and your Bunsen burner. Please return them to that cabinet when you're done. So here I have taken the water bath down. I have repositioned the evaporating dish directly on the wire gauze. Notice I've taken the watch glass and set it down below, out of the way, and I've turned it so that the curved side is up, so any liquid that might have still been on the bottom, and there shouldn't have been any, but if there's any liquid on the bottom of that, it is not going to be touching the table. It's going to be able to evaporate off of there. Now, next, we are going to heat this directly, but I'm going to do this by a method called waving to heat. That means that we are going to keep hold of that Bunsen burner, and we're going to wave it underneath there as we heat it. Okay, I have a video of this reaction, and we'll see what happens when I try to run this video. I was having a little bit of trouble before. Let's see, it looks like it's going to go pretty well. All right, so here's a video of me waving the Bunsen burner underneath, and you can see there is a gas being given off. That's just steam at this point. Early on, you're going to expect to see that there's going to be steam given off by the evaporating dish. Eventually, that steam will give way to a brownish gas that has a really bad smell. You want to avoid inhaling that if at all possible. And once we start to see that brownish gas, then we know we're starting to get toward the end of the experiment. Okay, so you're going to continue to heat it by the waving method until you start to see this. Now, along the way, if you hear any popping or spattering, you want to take that heat out right away. That's why we're doing it by the waving method, so you can take that heat out right away. So this is what the reaction will look like when it is completely done and completely dry. It says in the instructions that you should try to get a mass of this the third time, and that you should try to heat it again. It is very likely that we will not have the time to heat it for another time, and we'll have to go with this particular mass. Now, if you've done a good job of drying it, that should be fine. Okay, and at this point, we're ready to clean up. This solid product that's in your evaporating dish will go in the trash can, along with any matches that you've used. Do not put this tin and oxygen product in the sink. It does not dissolve in water, and it will not rinse down the sink. And then after you're finished, and along the way you may have done some of this anyway, you wash the graduated cylinder out. It has nitric acid. Be careful of that. Wash off the watch glass, and then rinse out the evaporating dish, and you will be all done. Now, remember, at the time when you're done with this lab, you will have only made 3 measurements, and everything else that's on the data table is something that you calculate. Notice the headings in the data table. Okay, so that wraps up the lab setup video if you need to. You can watch this again. You can rewind it, whatever you need to make sure that you are ready to do this lab when it's scheduled.